Oh, it's not Summer Mario anymore, it's September. I'm still wearing my pajama pants. Do I look like I care? I grab my coffee. Well, it's cherry Coke, but it's coffee to me. So, let's get going, shall we? Oh, it's gone flat. That's nice. Okay, so, in an update video I posted a while back, I said I was thinking of making this year's Summer of Mario mainly Donkey Kong themed. Obviously that didn't happen, what with Father Time screwing me over like he always does. But why Donkey Kong? Well, 2020 might have been the 35th anniversary of Super Mario Bros., but 2021 is actually the 40th anniversary of Mario's very first game, which is the classic Donkey Kong arcade game. And while Super Mario Bros. Obviously left a much bigger impact on the industry as a whole, Donkey Kong still left an influence on the Mario franchise going forward, and I think it's important for that to be felt and appreciated. I mean, without this game, Mario wouldn't even exist. Imagine him and Donkey Kong the character as being Justin Timberlake and Ryan Gosling. Stay with me here. Both of them have gone on to achieve individual levels of success, one clearly more successful than the other, though even then that's debatable. But lest we forget, they both got their start in the Mickey Mouse Club. The Mickey Mouse Club is the arcade in this analogy. You know what I'm getting at. The original Donkey Kong was released in July of 1981 and was followed up with two sequels, Donkey Kong Jr. and Donkey Kong 3. The first game also got ported to pretty much every single computer machine type thing on the planet, and initially I was considering looking at each version, but apparently the Lonely Goomba beat me to the punch not too long ago, because I always need to be 2 steps and 100,000 subscribers behind everybody else. So I'm just going to look at the original arcade release and its NES port. Same goes for the sequels. By the way, I wanted to show off this plushie at some point in the video. I wasn't sure where to fit this in. But, you know, looking at it now, it sort of looks bootleg, doesn't it? I mean, it's got the Nintendo logo on the tag, so I guess it's official. But I don't know, something about it just seems kind of off. He's got like this sort of DreamWorks raised eyebrow thing going on. It's like, hey, what's up? What do you mean I'm not bootleg? Why do I sound like Shaquille O'Neal? Now, I already knew who Mario was before I first played or even heard of Donkey Kong, but with me being a child of the late 90s, arcades were nowhere near as prominent as they were when both characters first came onto the scene. I consider myself pretty lucky then, because when I was a kid, my parents used to take me to a dentist's office with a waiting room that, for some reason, had a few arcade machines in the back corner. I spent so much time here that the dentist himself would have to physically drag me into his office because I loved playing all those games. That, and, well, let's just say he wasn't a very good dentist. But thanks to whoever came up with the idea to put arcade machines in the waiting room, I really hope you got a raise for that, by the way, I got to experience the original Donkey Kong in its original form. But have you ever heard the phrase, walk before one can run? Well, for Donkey Kong to run, Radar Scope had to walk. But it was more like trying to walk when you're paralyzed from the waist down. In the 1970s, companies like Atari had built arcade gaming into a money-making juggernaut, and Nintendo, still primarily a toy and playing card company then, decided to get in on the action. Radar Scope wasn't their first foray into the market, but they saw how much Taito was making from Space Invaders and said, I'll have what she's having. And that wasn't exactly what they got. The game sold very poorly when it was released in 1980, especially in the US, where 3,000 machines were shipped and only a third of them were sold. Maybe gamers felt that arcades had enough space-themed shooting games already, with Galaxian and Asteroids both being out for over a year at that point. And of course, Space Invaders filling up on so many quarters, cabinets are practically caving into the floor from how heavy they were getting. Radar Scope wasn't bad, it was even kind of innovative in a few areas. It just came at the wrong time and didn't really do enough to make it stand out.
Undeterred by the game's failure, Nintendo saw this as an opportunity to turn lemons into lemonade. They needed all those unsold machines to be repurposed and gave one of their staff members the task of creating a new game to take the place of Radarscope. He was the only one available at the time, he was in his late 20s, and he had just been hired to work at Nintendo as an artist about 3 years earlier. His name was Shigeru Miyamoto. I'm sorry, I can't stop looking at his hair. Good God. I'm sorry, let's move on. So, not having much programming experience, Miyamoto focused more on creating a unique story with a cast of characters, while his mentor, Gunpei Yokoi, oversaw the technical aspects.
I'm sure most of us know by now that the game was also planned to be based on Popeye the Sailor Man. Mario, Pauline, and Donkey Kong all fill the roles of Popeye, Olive Oil, and Bluto respectively, and even the use of a construction site as the game's backdrop was inspired by a Popeye short called A Dream Walking, which also takes place at a construction site. It's often believed that the concept was changed because Nintendo couldn't acquire the Popeye license. That's what I thought too, I even mentioned it in a couple videos I think. But turns out that they actually did have the license. They produced a Popeye arcade game only a year after Donkey Kong's release, and they also made a slew of Game & Watch games, one of which came out just a few weeks after Donkey Kong. Apparently they decided to use original characters because incorporating the Popeye characters proved to be a technical challenge, according to Gunpei Yokoi.
Speaking of hardware limitations, I find it interesting how some of the most recognizable aspects of the characters' designs were also born out of necessity. Mario wears a hat because hair was too difficult to animate. He wears red overalls to make his legs more noticeable against the black screen. From a visual and technical standpoint, the dev team really made a lot of clever and creative choices that helped give the game a distinct identity and some added personality. It's typical for video games to feature fully formed characters and settings nowadays. If developers want to get players further engrossed in their work, story and characters are practically needed. But during the golden age of arcades, video games were more focused on giving you basic roles to play. You were piloting the ship. You were driving the car. You were the paddle. As far as I know, there were only 2 real exceptions. There's Frogger, but even then the character hadn't been fully established yet. And then there's Pac-Man, who had individually named ghostly foes, and was an active crossdresser. Miss Pac-Man is actually Pac-Man's drag persona. That's my headcanon, and I'm sticking to it.
Honey, don't you know I'm more than Pac-Man with a bow?
Come on, it's 2021. You don't have to hide it anymore. It's okay. I support you.
With Donkey Kong, you knew the names of the carpenter-turned-plumber you were controlling, the girl you were trying to save, and the monkey that took her away from you. And unlike the games I just mentioned, rescuing Pauline was for more than just points on a counter, since you were given an actual backstory explaining why you had to go save her in the first place. And that was pretty niche back then. But instead of giving you a basic plot summary, I'm just gonna read Nintendo of America's official synopsis because it's far more entertaining. "Help! Help!" cries the beautiful maiden as she's dragged up a labyrinth of structural beams by the ominous Donkey Kong. Foreboding music warns of the eventual doom that awaits the poor girl, lest she somehow be miraculously rescued. But wait! Fear not, fair maiden! Little Mario the carpenter is in hot pursuit of you this very moment, throwing fate to the wind, risking life and limb, or worse. There it is again. Little Mario tries desperately to climb the mighty fortress of steel to save the lovely lady from the evil Mr. Kong. Please, call him Donkey. Mr. Kong is his father. Little Mario must dodge all manner of obstacles, fireballs, plummeting beams, and a barrage of exploding barrels fired at him by Donkey Kong. Amidst the beautiful girl's constant pleas for help, your challenge is to maneuver Little Mario up the steel structure while helping him to avoid the rapid-fire succession of hazards that come his way. As Little Mario gallantly battles his way up the barriers, he is taunted and teased by Donkey Kong, who brazenly struts back and forth, beating his chest in joyful exuberance at the prospect of having the beautiful girl all to himself. It is your job to get Little Mario to the top. for it is there, and only there, that he can send the mighty Donkey Kong to his mortal doom, leaving little Mario and the beautiful girl to live happily ever after. So, if you want the most exciting, most fun-filled, most talked-about family video game on the market, don't monkey around with anything but the original Donkey Kong. Well, that was incredibly melodramatic. It's really oddly worded in places, like they keep calling him Little Mario, and at one point they call him Mr. Kong, but then they just keep calling him Donkey Kong for the rest of it. Yeah, that's 1980s marketing for you. So, yeah, guess I gotta do the voiceover part now, right? Okay, just get this back in here.
So, yeah, Donkey Kong stole your girlfriend and you need to get her back. You'll be chasing Mr. Kong through 4 levels, and in each one, he'll be standing on the highest girder, beating his chest and throwing barrels down at you. Now that's what I call guerrilla warfare.
What did we say was your one gift to us?
No stupid jokes.
Have you ever played Snakes and Ladders? Donkey Kong is pretty much that. All you gotta do is jump and climb your way to the top of the stage until you technically make it to the end, but once you send DK plummeting to the ground in the last stage, the game just loops indefinitely. It's only truly over when the last quarter is spent. Or, you just give up. There's a lot of jumping and, shall we say, platforming involved, but if you can believe it, Donkey Kong wasn't exactly the first true platforming game to be made. That honor goes to a little-known title called Space Panic, which predated Donkey Kong by about 8 months. It's not a platformer in the way we know them today, you can't even jump for one thing, but it was the first game to involve climbing ladders and moving across various platforms. I think it's fair to say, however, that Donkey Kong was the one that made platforming games truly popular. Still, this is an arcade game from the early 1980s, and it really feels like it. Beyond avoiding hazards and having to save your girl, Donkey Kong doesn't give you very much else to do. You can find some of Pauline's lost items in later stages, like her hat, her purse, and her umbrella, but since this is a 40-year-old arcade game, they're just there to give you points. And your means of fending off enemies and other obstacles is also very limited, even with the hammer power-up in mind. At this point in his career, Mario doesn't have the greatest endurance, so he dies after taking just one hit. But if you touch a hammer, Mario will start uncontrollably slamming it into the ground like my partner when they find a spider in their house. It can destroy almost anything it touches, but you can't jump while using it, so often you'll just be standing around waiting for it to wear off. And Mario's supposed to be pretty good at jumping, right? That's like one of the biggest things everybody knows him for. Well, playing as Mario in the original Donkey Kong is like controlling Steve Rogers before he becomes Captain America. Yeah, for a character with such a widely recognized physical talent, and originally being called Jump Man, ironically, he kinda sucks at it here. He has no midair momentum, and if he falls from too great a height, he'll drop dead, even if he's only 2 feet off the ground. Ugh, come on, that's just pathetic. Mario, what are you doing?
God, this game hasn't aged well. That's the thing that makes revisiting classic games somewhat challenging, especially if you're a bit younger. Kids today might be turned off by the stiff controls and lack of power-ups, but that's only because they're more used to games that are deeper and richer in terms of content. It doesn't make the older games worse, it just makes playing them feel lesser by comparison. Now, what about the NES version? Well, the second stage is gone for some reason, but visually it matches the arcade game closer than any of the 7 billion other ports that were out back then could ever hope to achieve. And some of the enemies and hazards move a bit slower, and it actually helps make the game a little easier than the original. That only applies to Game A, though. Game B is slightly harder, with obstacles like springs moving faster. When you look at ports and re-releases of the original Donkey Kong, the NES version is the one you'll find the most. In fact, aside from the port included as a minigame in Donkey Kong 64, which, even then it was more of a recreation than an actual port, the original arcade version wouldn't get an official re-release of its own until 2018, when it was released as part of the Arcade Archive series for the Switch eShop. This is how I recorded the game and its sequels for this video, and this one in particular includes 3 different versions of the game. The early version is the easiest, while the later version adds more enemies, and the international version, which is what us Americans got, has it so that more of the game's stages are made available to you the more times you beat it. But why the hell did it take
37 years
for Nintendo to start making this game more widely available? Well, this is believed to be because of a lawsuit filed by Ikegami Tsushinki, the company responsible for programming the original game. According to a contract signed by the 2 parties, Ikegami were given the exclusive rights to manufacture Donkey Kong arcade boards, and in 1983 they sued Nintendo claiming they'd violated that contract by producing their own boards. Then Nintendo countered by stating they only let Ikegami make the boards and didn't give them any ownership of the game's code. Then everyone just threw their hands up and said, screw it, and both companies settled out of court in 1990. Now I sound like I'm in a Legal Eagle video. Well, is everybody totally lost? Good. Let's play some Donkey Kong Jr.
Released in August 1982, this game picks up from where the previous one left off, but with a twist. Donkey Kong's been captured by Mario, and this time it's up to his son, Donkey Kong Jr., to save him. That must have been a pretty bold move for Nintendo to make back then, taking the hero of the previous game and using him as a villain. Of course, this would be the only sort of antagonistic role Mario would ever play again, but making the good guy the bad guy and the villain of the first game the damsel in distress is still a unique approach for a sequel to take. If only the game didn't suck so much. Okay, so Donkey Kong Jr. is similar to the first one in that there are only 4 stages, and you have to jump across platforms, climb up things, and watch out for all the bad stuff to get to the top of the level. To give this game some credit for a second, how you actually finish each stage does come with a little more variety. Junior climbs up vines and chains instead of ladders, and he can even climb faster by clinging onto 2 at once. I also think it's pretty cool how the first half of the game takes place in a jungle, and then the second half has you going through more man-made settings. That sense of progression and Junior having to leave his home to fight Mario on his turf makes the game feel bigger and more like a grand adventure. The search for Christopher Robin. But where this game succeeds at changing things up without straying too far from what worked in the original, it doesn't seem to try and improve on any of the stuff that didn't work. Most of the first game's trappings are still here, and with them comes an added bunch of new problems. Despite being strong enough to carry his own father above his head, what is that monkey feeding his kid? Junior shares the same fragility and stiff controls as Mario, and while it's excusable considering how much younger he is than Mario, it doesn't make it any better to deal with. The enemy placement is also way more obnoxious, so that doesn't help. You can kill enemies by dropping pieces of fruit down on them while climbing, but it's pointless because you're so focused on getting to the top that you'll end up avoiding enemies more than actually killing them. They keep moving around a lot too, so 50 times out of 10, the fruit might not even hit them anyway. These guys always seem to be in the most inconvenient spots, and the more you play, the worse it gets. Thank God the Arcade Archive version has save states. As far as I'm concerned, this is the only way to play the original Donkey Kong Jr. without it making you want to commit arson. You could also give the NES version a shot. It's nowhere near as annoying as the arcade game, since the enemies move in slower increments, and even Junior's controls are a little bit smoother. Emphasis on a little bit.
You know, Donkey Kong Jr. seems like the kind of game that was made purposefully hard just to get people to spend more pocket change on it. But the NES port? It's not that bad. Maybe I was just being too harsh. Never mind, this game sucks. Well, now I need something to calm my nerves. Something that can both relax me and maybe even brush up on some math?
I know. This game has nothing to do with anything. But, come on, when the hell was I ever going to talk about this? Donkey Kong Jr. math is exactly what you think it is. is in a math game starring Donkey Kong Jr.? Huh. I was just gonna say boring, but you are technically right there. Educational games already don't have the greatest reputation, but there are a few that succeed at being informative and fun to play. This game is not one of them. You have a training mode where you practice solving different types of equations, and then you have a two-player mode where you and a friend compete to add, subtract, multiply, and divide numbers until one of you gets the number Donkey Kong gives you. If you're wondering why this other junior isn't doing anything, it's not because the second player fell asleep, though that is a very reasonable assumption. It's because I didn't realize this was a two-player mode when I selected it, since the title screen failed to indicate that I could play it with somebody else. But why would I want to do that anyway? I mean, think of all the great two-player games that the NES has to offer. Contra, Double Dragon, Bubble Bobble, Donkey Kong Jr. Math.
Yeah, there's a reason why I didn't cover it in full during my educational Mario games video. It just has nothing going for it. And I'm not trying to bash it purely for the sake of bashing it. I like to think I'm not that cynical. The game just isn't very good. Though apparently another educational Donkey Kong game was planned at some point. It was going to be music-based, which actually sounds pretty cool. But the game was cancelled due to the limited number of songs and issues with the rights to certain other songs. But I think we all know the real reason why it got cancelled. I mean, come on, let's be real here. If I wanted big hairy monkeys to teach me stuff, I'd go back to middle school. Boy, those were some weird times.
But let's wrap things up for today by taking a look at the last of the arcade trilogy, Donkey Kong 3. Oh, a number! Wait, so where's Donkey Kong 2? I'm kidding, but there actually was a Donkey Kong 2 made for the Game & Watch series as a follow-up to the Game & Watch port of the original Donkey Kong. It's sort of confusing though, because there was also a Game & Watch port of Donkey Kong Jr. based on the first level of the arcade game, and Donkey Kong 2 for Game & Watch is based on the third and fourth levels, so really it should be called Donkey Kong Jr. 2, or maybe the first game should be Donkey Kong 2, and then we can call the second one Donkey Kong 2 2. I want to punt a baby! So Donkey Kong 3 changes things up by having you play as an exterminator named Stanley, and his greenhouse has been broken into by
the gorilla who refers to himself as an ass.
I'm not sure what exactly DK's beef with this guy is, or why he's decided to go after his greens, but regardless, Stanley needs to get rid of him and keep his precious plants and veggies safe. That brings us to the gameplay, which, as you can tell, is also very different from the first two games. It's less focused on platforming and instead plays more like a shooter. Stanley is armed with a can of insect repellent, and he can use it to spray at Donkey Kong and push him closer to the top of the screen, letting you move on to the next level. Or, you could also use it to repel against insects. Yeah, Donkey Kong doesn't just have plenty og cocknuts to hurl at you. Jeez. But while he's hanging up in the rafters, he'll shake some nests to get swarms of bugs to go after you. Or more accurately, those things. I'm not sure if they're supposed to be potted plants or wind-up blobs. Oh, they're flowers, I guess? But whatever they are, bugs will try to snatch them. It's not really a big deal if they do, though. You just get a better score for keeping them all after finishing a stage. Well, screw that. There are far more important things to worry about. Like maintaining your sanity with all those goddamn bugs. I thought Donkey Kong Jr.'s enemy placement was bad, but this game just gets ridiculous. So many bugs will appear on screen, it's hard to keep track. So your focus will constantly be shifting, and then you get killed by something you won't even be able to see coming. And I really could not stand these caterpillars. You can't kill them with your normal bug spray, and shooting at them makes them stop in place, which gets really annoying when they end up blocking you from getting to Donkey Kong. But wait, what did I mean by normal bug spray? Well, there's also a different kind of bug spray that's way more powerful, even strong enough to kill those caterpillars. But I couldn't find out for myself because this thing rarely ever showed up. And when it did, no caterpillars were on screen, so I don't really have much to show for it, do I? I mean, it's more useful than the fruit in Donkey Kong Jr., but at least they were more frequently given to you. Donkey Kong 3 might just be my least favorite of the arcade games. While I do think it's the most unique due to it not being your standard jump and climb affair, it also managed to be a step down from its predecessors in terms of gameplay and overall design. I might not be the only one who feels that way, because apparently the game only moved about 5,000 units, at least in North America, 6 times less than Donkey Kong Jr., and 12 times less than the original. Maybe the video game crash had something to do with it since it came out around that time, but it must have done well enough to get an NES port, which is more or less the same game, so there's not a whole lot to talk about there. But what's going on with DK on the box art? He looks like he's wearing a gimp mask, and his nipples are bigger than his pupils. Oh dear.
Remember what I said before about the trouble with replaying older games? Well, it's not always just dated design elements that can make them seem worse. In some cases, it's a matter of people realizing that they just might not have been very good to begin with. Every single game that we've grown up with, from the most widely regarded classics to the smallest childhood favorites that only we remember, is objectively flawed to some degree, despite how much our nostalgic biases keep us from admitting it.
This of course applies to the Donkey Kong arcade games as well, and in my opinion, the quality really takes a dive by the time we get to the third game, but that's due to problems with the games themselves and not just signs of the time they were released in. Age and quality don't always go hand in hand, so just because something's old doesn't mean it's bad. You don't have to like it if it doesn't fit your tastes and preferences, but you can still find something to appreciate it for, whether it be the intent it was created or the influence it left on our culture. The sequels might not be all that great, but personally, I still have a lot of respect for the original Donkey Kong. Its importance is easy to see when you look at how the Mario franchise was affected by it. Donkey Kong Jr. hasn't had the best luck, only making a small number of playable appearances in games like Super Mario Kart and Mario Tennis 64. But Mario went on to star in his own games, and that speaks for itself. Pauline officially became a mainstay after popping up in Super Mario Odyssey as the mayor of New Donk City, the biggest love letter to the arcade game you could possibly imagine. And the version of Donkey Kong featured in these games soon evolved into the character of Cranky Kong and passed the torch onto his grandson, starting with the Donkey Kong Country series. I also genuinely believe the original Donkey Kong contributed so much more to the gaming industry than most people might ever understand. Think about it. Before Donkey Kong, video games were designed to just be played. Now, they're designed to be experienced and enriching. How certain mechanics are incorporated and how the whole game is structured are now determined by what happens in the story and what the characters are going through. I'm convinced that Donkey Kong was where that all started. Maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but just think of all the seeds it planted. And look how much they've grown.
But we're still not done, because while I was doing research in preparation for this video, I came across a game called
Donkey Kong 3 Gyakushū.
Yeah, that. I thought it'd make for a neat little bonus, so I'll try to make this quick. Before they gave us the Mario Party games, Hudson used to take a bunch of different Nintendo games and bring them to Japanese home computers. They weren't direct ports or remakes, and they weren't exactly sequels either. They were similar to the games they were based on, with some slight differences. Donkey Kong 3 was given this treatment, and the liberties they took with this one are interesting, to say the least. Stanley can't jump anymore, and I'm sorry, are we on a highway? Strange bridge? What's so strange about it? Is it made of quicksand? Well, now it's taken us on the country road, presumably to West Virginia, Aunt Jemima. Okay, so it seems like this game has more of a cross-country road trip vibe going for it. Aliens? We have aliens now? Or maybe they're just Jawas with their eyes closed? Well, I guess they'd count as aliens. And now we're in a UFO? And now we're going around the Saturn? And now we're by the pyramid? In the cave? At the active volcano? What the hell's going on? I thought we were in,
Space!
Well, the last stage is in a city, but the Saturn is in the background, so is this city just on a different planet? Or is the whole planet a city, like Coruscant? Or Well, +1 for added level variety, -2 for being more confusing than a Klingon crossword puzzle.
Hello! Thanks for watching, everybody, and as always, a very special thank you to my superstar supporters, Red Rack, Henry Newman, Rachel Rodriguez, and Jake Winans. If you'd like to support me as well, then please consider pledging to my Patreon page or becoming a sponsor of this channel by clicking the join button. Membership options give you the same benefits as my Patreon, including being able to watch videos before they come out, getting access to exclusive content like being able to read all my scripts, and getting shoutouts at the end of my videos. Both my Patreon and YouTube membership are totally optional, but it would really mean a lot to me if you gave them a look. And look at that, I'm back from my break. So, yeah, looks like summer's just about over. Feels kind of awkward still using the Summer of Mario moniker, but in case you didn't read my most recent community post, if this is going to be a regular thing where I don't necessarily save these special Mario videos just for the summer and just branch out to like the other half of the year, then I might just scrap the Summer of Mario name entirely. I'll still do like all the Mario videos from the beginning of summer, maybe until a certain time, but I might want to space myself out just so I don't have to stress myself out. I don't really want that. So I might just call it like the Mario-thon or something. Anyone that has read the community post seemed to be okay with it, but let me know in the comments. Do you think I should stick with the summer motif, or are you okay with me not just limiting myself to the summer and keeping it going a little longer? Let me know and I'll make note of that for the future. Now you're probably thinking, wait, community posts, what are you talking about? Well, sometimes I like to post updates in the community tab on my YouTube channel, but also in the announcements channel on my Discord server, which you can check out if you're not in there already. So, yeah, I don't really have much else. But if I do think of something I want to talk about, I'll probably mention it on the community tab or in my Discord server, so look out for that. Speaking of which, the link to my Discord server and social media, whatever, are in the description, and if you want to stay updated on what I put up in my community tab, or you want to stay updated on future uploads, then be sure to ring the notification bell so that YouTube will let you know when I put something out, because apparently being subscribed just isn't enough anymore. Yay. So, thanks again for watching, and with that said, this is Mark bidding you all a smashing farewell. Bye, guys.